Hi, my name is Stephanie White Neuhold, and this is my Encouraging the Heart project. Here's some relevant background information. This is my 6th year as an early childhood special educator. I have worked with a variety of children and the disabilities that they have. Being an inclusive leader is part of my everyday. I have 4 paraeducators in my classroom. Our constant communication, goal, and idea sharing are crucial for success of all of my students and just the daily function that we have in our classroom. Using inclusive leadership techniques for the success of my students with disabilities is very important. Working with all levels of administration to find inclusive strategies for all students is part of every individualized education plan. Context seems to be the most motivating factor for administrators. How much do they know about the kids in their schools, and how involved are they in planning for children and their special needs? My first article is Leading Inclusive Reform for Students with Disabilities, a School and Statewide Approach. Theo Harris and Costin continue to open the conversation that school leadership needs to find a way to make education settings inclusive to all children with varying disabilities. They state that all children with disabilities need access to the highest quality of education to help meet their needs. This exposure to education and quality peers will help their overall outcome and success in education. What they mean by this is too much pull-out with students with disabilities does not expose them to teachers that are specialized in different areas and to help them learn different subject matters, and instead of having one resource teacher trying to teach every area of education. This is a slide, and it's just kind of a framework taken from a workbook for planning possible positive futures, planning alternative tomorrows with hope for schools, organizations, businesses, families. Using inclusive strategies with all of those involved to come up with an overall vision for success to include all children with disabilities. I know especially when I was beginning out in the field, something like this, a 6-step process of just kind of evaluating where services are for the child, what are strengths and problems of the program, and how to get everyone involved. Sometimes a step-by-step program really helps teachers and parents and administrators kind of get on the same page and work through this together. So again, it just provides a visual for team members, something to pass out and talk and see if people are in the right place, and if they're going through all the steps to make sure that they're finding the most appropriate way to serve a child. There are 7 steps they list to include leadership to make an effective plan for inclusion. First, evaluate the current plan, create a new service delivery plan, restructure who is serving the students and how, change daily practices by regular ed teachers, creating a sense of belonging for all students, and deciding how districts implement this new plan. My second article is Leadership for All Students, Planning for More Inclusive School Practices. Black and Simon provide research dating back to the 1960s, describing how inclusive education has changed in idea, theory, and practice. Resistance is a very common factor in all settings to inclusive settings. Whether it be teachers are unprepared or unwilling, some regular education teachers have been reluctant to full-blown inclusion. Complete inclusion for students has not been successful overall. There's so much resistance that it has kept this idea from taking hold. A common problem is that educational teams use a one-size-fits-all theory, and they don't think outside of the box to help students succeed in the classroom. Pulling students out of the regular education setting is much more common. It is thought that students without disabilities will suffer from inclusion strategies. Through research, Black and Simon found that true inclusion practices may take 5 years to implement. Everyone involved must buy into inclusion to make it happen. If all involved are committed to the change, it happens much easier. Leaders must help facilitate the idea of inclusion at all levels to support it through difficult times. Especially when you're working with children with disabilities, you're going to get lots of kinks and things that you didn't foresee and different settings that didn't work, and the leadership really has to be there to support everyone through the process, because it's never easy for a regular or special ed teacher, parents, or the child that's being served. Leaders should help the regular and special educators to find value in their students with disabilities. It is too easy to define these students as special education students and not learn their own strengths and weaknesses. It's very common to just label children autistic and expect them to act the same way and do the same things in a classroom when that's really just not the case. They're like any other child. They're all different and have their own strengths and weaknesses. Leadership must help all involved understand the purpose of inclusion. If all involved support the idea, it will have more success and longevity. In order to make a successful plan of inclusion for each student, communication between key members is essential. All future educators need to understand the needs of the students with disabilities. All who deliver the services need support from leadership to know their role and responsibilities in the inclusion process. Learning should be the focus for the student and the teacher. If everyone can learn, the plan is successful. The teacher will learn through the experience, and the student will succeed with proper supports. Educational supports are essential for the regular education teacher, who may be apprehensive about inclusive classrooms. Specific training on inclusion can reduce anxiety for the teacher and prepare them appropriately. Part 2. In my particular field of special education, and my hope to be an administrator in this field as well, inclusive leadership is essential at every level. Leaders at the top of my early childhood department need to have an understanding of what is happening in classrooms with kids, teachers, and paraeducators. Now, building administrators and superintendents need to be advocates for the regular and special ed teachers. In my case, I have much more interaction with my building administrator than I do my special education administrator, just because they're there on the daily basis and they know the families and the students and just have a better understanding of what is going on. And it's really key to feeling supported and getting the best plan for each kid. In Chapter 7 of our required text, the main focus was on experimenting and taking risks. Inclusion seems to fit both of those needs, especially in today's day and age with a regular education teacher and a special education teacher. This experiment must have small wins as described in the text. Wins for all involved to build a strong team and educational experience for the student and teacher. The risk must be worth it to the regular education teacher to ensure they buy into the program. Collaboration is key. As an educator, I know that I feel most appreciated when my opinion is asked for and valued. There's nothing that can demean an employee faster than the demands to be placed with no clear value of the opinion. A leader that is inclusive will be a support and offer guidance to an all-inclusive team. They will not dictate, but facilitate. Administrators can make or break inclusive plans and strategies with their own leadership strategies. I always think it's really important to talk to the administrators before you come up with a plan, because you might get in a meeting and an administrator might throw something out that you know isn't going to work and you've thought through, but they don't know where you stand, so you're just on different pages. Part 3. In special education specifically, the challenges of being an inclusive leader are many. Depending on whether you lead through the special education entity or the regular education entity, you have many things to consider. My current special education leader oversees 16 sites with 30 to 40 students per site. She has to try to make herself aware of the general needs and issues in each site. She also must communicate effectively with all of her teachers and the administration they work with, as each is so very different. Being an inclusive leader is especially important in special education. So many different service providers work with children with disabilities. All members of the team must have the same goal. When members of the team have their own priorities, the team implodes. An inclusive leader must help the team find and achieve a common goal for the student of concern in special education. Once the leader has helped establish this pattern of service, the team will continue to grow and develop as they repeat this process for more and more students with disabilities. The leader will then take more of a backseat role, more for maintenance and support once the major hurdles are cleared. Here's my bibliography page, and thanks for listening.